I think where the problem lies is more in academia. And in academia, you have, the old Sovietologists of pre-1991 became experts on Russia, and they dominate post-Soviet studies. You don't get a center for Russian, East European or Eurasian studies which is not controlled by Russian experts. You don't get it controlled by Ukrainians or Georgians or Uzbeki experts. And because of that, just like in some ways journalists which are based in Moscow and have to cover the former USSR, they inevitably will see things through Russian eyes. They don't read the Ukrainian media, they don't know the Ukrainian language, they don't feel secure in Kyiv, they don't know who to interview. And so even on things like the selection of their footnotes and resources, that already feeds into a bias. The bias can be in different levels. You do have extreme bias of people like Richard Sakwa in Britain and the editor of The Nation, who was always on CNN for some reason in the US, Cohen. There's that group. But there's also others who will provide a Russian view, I would call, of the crisis in Ukraine, but they're not necessarily pro-Putin, and they'd be very offended if you said they were pro-Putin. Russian people who write on Russia, people who are from Russia, who are academics, they have a long experience of writing for Western journals and publications. Ukrainian academics from Ukraine, very few of them get published in the West to this day. They don't know the English language. And so that situation which you had in the USSR, even, where people based in Moscow and Leningrad, Russian academics, Academy of Sciences, universities, they knew English. They had access to Western publications. Ukrainians did not. So that provincialism still remains. The number of Ukrainian academics who get published in the West is extremely small still. And Ukrainian diaspora doesn't even try to support that. I'll give you one example. Volodymyr Viatrovych, the head of the government-funded Institute of National Memory, is very prolific. And he writes a lot of good stuff on Ukrainian nationalism, but he doesn't know English. And his books, therefore, and articles are always in Ukrainian. Why is the diaspora and various funds not translating his work into English and getting it published in the West? This doesn't happen, but why not? So that problem means that Ukrainian academics can't really compete with Russian academics. There's a journal in this 300 publications I mentioned, there's a journal called Russian Politics and Law. And it had 3 special issues on the Ukrainian-Russian war called Crisis. 3 special issues. Do you know how many special issues of Harvard Ukrainian Studies and the CIUS Journal there were on the crisis? 0. 0. In 2015, the CIUS Journal did a special issue on the Holodomor. Of course, we're short of publications on the Holodomor, right? No. We have publications coming out of our ears on the Holodomor. But none of these Ukrainian studies publications published anything on the Euromaidan, on the Crimea, and on the war in Donbas. This is, I think, a far more deeper problem. It's as though this conflict is something too much for us to take in, as it were, and it's beyond our comprehension. And because of that, the kind of Ukrainian viewpoint and which I would call the informed viewpoint, that this is not a civil war between Russian and Ukrainian speakers. This is a Russian aggression against Ukraine. This is a Russian-Ukrainian war. Doesn't really get out to the more broader academic and therefore policymaking community. We need to rethink our approaches, and we need to have a perestroika of Ukrainian studies.